Welcome to Themyscira. We are the Amazons.
I named this island Paradise. Peace. For an excellent reason. Sisterhood. There are no men on it.
Years have passed.
Perhaps men are now different. Athletic discipline.
You are immortal,
As are all of us on Paradise Island. If you should ever leave here, you could revert to a human being. In 1,000 years, no one has ever discovered.
Your tiara.
It's a man. His name is Steve Trevor. Where did you find the man, daughter? On the beach. Near the cave. United States. I believe I can handle the mother. The invisible plane is waiting.
Given my abilities, one might
The
think it's
America is already aboard.
unconscionable for me not to do a little good.
Bullet-deflecting metal.
You're not the old way.
Wrist.
I never shot a woman before.
Woman.
Except in self-defense.
When I sent her away to America, I had no idea she would become such a legend as Wonder Woman.
Kind of good at it.
Suppose we start with your name.
Wonder Woman.
That's the last name. Woman. First name.
Need a gun
Wonder,
to
right?
take you. Wonder Woman.
There's a reason she runs around in a colorful costume.
Because you are one.
You play, people like it, they like her.
You are
Okay, we're talking showboat here. Obviously, this woman needs some anger management.
I can be
And
very
the outfit?
persuasive.
I mean, let's strut your stuff, I get that. But let's face it, the girl is a little nuts.
Greetings, sisters. Welcome to Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace. My name is Angela, and this is episode 2. Okay, we are back. A quick update on the podcast before we get into the reviews. It is now available on iTunes and Stitcher. Silly me, I thought the difficult part was recording and editing. No, turns out getting authorization to be on all the podcast feed sites is the tricky thing. I also created a YouTube channel. You can find that at Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace. And I am posting video of the podcast. It's just the audio with a still of the logo for the full time. And that's just in case something ever happens to the main feed. I want there to be a backup so that the thing doesn't completely disappear from the internet. As a longtime podcast fan, there have been too many times when I will be listening to the archives of a show and then something happens and the feed gets taken down and all the episodes are gone forever. That's actually what happened to the show that got me into Wonder Woman in the first place. There was a podcast that was a fan-made audio drama about Wonder Woman as like UN ambassador for Themyscira. Something happened and the feed went down. And the only episodes I had left were the ones that I'd had downloaded. So, just in case something ever happens, I don't anticipate it ever happening, but in case, years down the line, someone finds Warrior for Peace and wants to listen to it, but something happened to the main site and the feed is no longer available, there should still be the YouTube backup. The podcast also got some Facebook likes and a message and follows on Instagram and Twitter, which was really encouraging. I legitimately was not expecting that after one episode. So if you're one of the people who did that, thank you. That was super encouraging and helped me feel like I wasn't just shouting into the void. Oh, and my voice may sound a bit froggy this episode. Just when I think my narration can't get worse, I get a cold that ruins my voice for 3 weeks. At this point, I've got to record an episode so it can still come out during the month of May, but my plans for a promo have to be delayed until my voice is back to 100%. See, this is why Podcasting for Dummies says you should record a few episodes before releasing your podcast. Did I follow that advice? No. Okay, let's get things started with Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 1. Cover date is January 1942. The writer was Charles Moulton, who we know was William Moulton Marsden. The artist was Harry G. Peter, and I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Archives Volume 1. Wonder Woman is flying a silent, transparent plane with the bandaged Steve Trevor lying unconscious on a cot beside her. Steve awakens for a moment, thinking he's in heaven and that Diana is a beautiful angel, which she says is the first time a man's ever called her beautiful. Well, yeah, isn't this the first time she's ever heard a man speak, ever? He's the first guy she's ever seen, and he didn't wake up after crashing on Paradise Island. Anyway, after landing the plane and hiding it in an abandoned barn outside Washington, D.C., she delivers Steve to Walter Reed Hospital, then runs off before she can answer the doctor's questions. Needing to kill time while Steve recovers, Wonder Woman decides to go window shopping. There's a pretty funny bit where she comments on how much fabric American dresses use, all the while ignorant of the scandalized reactions the people around her are having to the sight of a woman wearing essentially a strapless mini dress. She comes across a bank robbery in progress, so she leaps into action, commenting how fun it is to play bullets and bracelets again. By the time the police show up, she's taken out all the thieves. As she runs away from the officers' questions, she is pursued by a man in a car who saw her stop the robbery. Diana keeps running faster, and her pursuer has to speed up to 80 miles an hour just to pull alongside her and tell her he has a business proposition. He introduces himself as Al Kale, a booking agent who can get her Bullets and Bracelets act on stage, which he says would be very profitable. Realizing she needs money, Diana agrees, and for 3 weeks she gives performances that break theater records and get written about in all the newspapers. While reading a paper, Diana sees an article that says Captain Trevor has woken from his concussion-induced coma, so she tells Kale she's quitting. Upset, he decides to take half of the money, but she stops him and recovers her share before he can escape. As she approaches the hospital, Wonder Woman sees an army nurse with dark hair and glasses crying on the steps. Asking if there's any way she can help, the nurse says she was recently assigned to the hospital, but her fiancé just got a job in South America. His salary is too small to send for her, so Diana, noticing that the two women look very similar, offers to buy Nurse Prince's identity so they can both be with the men they love. The woman, also conveniently named Diana, will be able to afford the move to South America, and Wonder Woman, also conveniently a trained nurse, will be able to care for Steve. Ah, you gotta love good old-fashioned Golden Age coincidences. The original Diana Prince agrees, so the new Diana Prince becomes the special nurse for Captain Trevor. As the captain recovers, he says he's wasting time and wants to get back to work. Nurse Prince tells him she thinks he's more interested in finding the woman who brought him to the hospital, this beautiful angel he keeps talking about. After reading a newspaper article about a Nazi threat to bomb Camp Merrick with poisonous gas that can't be stopped by gas masks, Steve sneaks out of the hospital and reports for duty. Diana returns to the barn where she hid the transparent plane as Steve flies his fighter around the camp waiting for the enemy bomber. When it arrives, he tries shooting it from the sky, but when he realizes his bullets aren't working against the armored plating, he crashes into the Nazi plane, ejecting at the last second. His parachute is damaged in the explosion, however, and he plummets to Earth. Wonder Woman catches him in mid-air, and he recognizes his beautiful angel, though she comments she's more like a guardian angel. The enemy pilot also managed to eject from his plane, so Wonder Woman rescues him as well. He's mortally wounded, though, and before he dies he taunts the Allies that more poison gas bombs will be dropped by planes coming from his secret base. Conveniently, Diana had the foresight to consult the magic sphere about the location of this base before she left Paradise Island, so she's able to fly them right to the enemy's island. She and Steve fight their way into the base, don some gas masks, and shoot a container of poison gas, though apparently this is a different kind of poison gas than the one used in the bombs that they're dropping on America, since that one was specifically said to permeate gas masks. Knowing he's dying, the base leader sets off the self-destruct, but Wonder Woman is able to leap clear of the explosion. She pulls Steve from the rubble, and he returns to the hospital with a broken leg. There, Steve is congratulated for breaking up the Nazi gang, but he insists that the credit belongs to the beautiful angel Wonder Woman. His superiors think he's delirious, but he insists there is a Wonder Woman. Nurse Prince says she believes him, but that he doesn't need one now since he has her. He replies that she's nice and he likes her, but she can't compare to Wonder Woman. The issue ends with Diana wishing her mother could see her now and musing on the irony that she's her own romantic rival. Okay, a lot of stuff to cover. I was surprised to see that the invisible jet is already a part of the story. Although, at this point, it's called the transparent plane. I guess jet engines weren't really a thing yet. And there's no explanation as to where it came from. It's just, yep, Wonder Woman is flying a transparent plane now. The bit with the bank robbery and the Talon agent and the stage shows, and then her quitting, we've already seen from the TV show, but of course it would have been taking it from this issue. We're just seeing it the other way around since we reviewed the pilot last month. The whole meeting the woman who looks just like her, who's also named Diana and also a nurse. Yeah, that part was just really, really cheesy, even for the 40s. And yeah, the convenience that Wonder Woman had just happened to have asked the Magic Sphere the location of this secret Nazi base before she left Paradise Island, that was a little corny too. I do want to mention a change to the costume. In the first appearance, it looked like she was wearing a blue star-spangled skirt, but in this one you can see that it's actually like a really loose pair of shorts. Because of the illustration style, when she's standing with her legs together, it looks like a skirt, but when her legs are apart, you can see that it's actually two individual pants legs. According to the web, this is a style called culottes, which was deemed more practical than a skirt for all the action stunts that Wonder Woman does. Also, Wonder Woman has a white belt on her costume now, and in some of the panels it kind of gets wider and curves up in the front, kind of hinting at the shape of the traditional Wonder Woman belt. We actually have some of the first concept art that Harry Peter did for illustrating the Wonder Woman costume, and it's rather different. It's actually a two-piece, and there's no star on the tiara, and the eagle is silver, and there's stars on the belt and the skirt. I will link to that in the show notes so you can take a look. So yeah, I liked the first half of this issue, but the second half brought it down with a bunch of really ridiculous plot-convenient coincidences, so I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. Okay, next up is Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 2. Cover date is March 1987. Greg Potter and George Perez are credited for script, co-plotters, and pencils. Bruce Patterson did the inks, John Costanza the letters, Tatiana Wood the colors, and Karen Berger was the editor. And I'm reading this from the Wonder Woman by George Perez omnibus. It's midnight, and Colonel Steve Trevor has been summoned by General Kohler to report to him at Hanscom Air Force Base. As his attaché, Lieutenant Etta Candy, drives them through a thunderstorm, Trevor wonders why Kohler, a man he reported to a Congressional Investigation Committee for Crimes in Vietnam, would want to see him. Reporting for duty, Trevor learns his mission is to fly a new fighter jet to show it off to some foreign VIPs. He points out that he's overqualified for the mission, and that the coordinates he's supposed to fly to are in the middle of nowhere, but Kohler, no love lost between the two, yells at him to shut up and follow orders. After meeting his overly aggressive co-pilot Captain Slade, Steve flies the jet off the runway as Kohler watches, musing over the fact that peaceful Colonel Trevor is doing the will of Ares, the god of war. On Themyscira, it's also thundering, and thick clouds fill the sky as Diana approaches a statue of Artemis to learn the details of her mission. Her mother and a few of her sisters watch, and Menelope mentions that the gods promised to give their champion a special weapon. On Mount Olympus, the Amazons' goddesses urge Hephaestus, god of metalworking, to hurry as he forges this weapon from Gaia's girdle, the lasso of truth. Finally complete, it appears in front of Diana in a flash of lightning that came from the statue. As she goes to pick it up, she's greeted by Hermes, whom the Amazons haven't seen in centuries, and he transports the two of them to where she can find the first clue to stopping Ares. In the churning skies, Steve Trevor tries to radio the base to report reaching his destination, but the signal is lost in the storm. Slade then notices their navigation equipment is malfunctioning, moments before the plane encounters rough turbulence and starts spinning out of control. Just in time, Steve manages to regain control, and they begin to gain altitude again. Hermes and Diana arrive in Areopagus, the now crumbling palace of the god of war. Inside, he leads her to a woman wrapped in rags, a woman powerful enough to destroy the messenger god, but who may speak to Diana as she's never met her, and so has no reason to hate the Amazon. Calling herself Harmonia, she says she wants to be left alone, but when Diana says she's trying to stop Ares, she gives the princess a talisman to help her find him. Harmonia explains that as the daughter of Aphrodite, she could have been beautiful, but because Ares was her father, her chance at beauty was destroyed. She warns Diana not to be corrupted by the power of the talisman, just before Hermes calls to the Amazon that he's heard the cries of her sisters, and that Themyscira is in great danger. The warrior women are in a panic as a giant bird breaks through the clouds protecting the island. Inside this bird, Steve has only a moment to realize he's been flying over a city before Slade wraps his hands around his throat. The co-pilot, ignoring his suddenly smoking and melting flesh, raves about how they needed the unbeliever's skill to get through Athena's clouds. But because he opposed the servants of Ares, Trevor will now die, but not before being forced to bomb the Amazons. The sight of Wonder Woman flying towards what she thinks of as a giant metal bird with a transparent head changes his plans, however, so Slade releases the bomb before losing control of the plane and crashing into the ocean. Diana quickly realizes the bomb is a weapon, and so lassos it and sends it flying off to detonate harmlessly in the sky. The Amazons marvel at this weapon that can set the sky on fire, as Diana dives after the plane, hoping she can learn more about Ares' plan from their attacker. She sees the disintegrating body of Slade, but is warned not to touch it by the sea deity Themis, who instead instructs her to rescue Colonel Trevor. Back at Hanscom Base, Lieutenant Candy found Steve's midnight mission very odd, and so called Kohler's superior, General Hillary. The general was unaware of the mission, and furiously demands to see Kohler, but when they open his office door, all that's left is a smoking skeleton. After rescuing the colonel, Diana took him to the Island of Healing, a small island off the coast of Themyscira. There the injured man is taken care of, as the Amazons debate whether or not to let him live. Their argument is broken up by the appearance of Athena, the first in over 3,000 years. She reveals that the amulet Diana got from Harmonia is only one half of the talisman, and only when it's complete will they be able to find and defeat Ares. Hermes arrives to take Diana and Steve to Man's world, and after hugging her mother goodbye and saluting her sisters, Diana picks up the unconscious man, and the messenger god uses the mortal's thoughts to transport them back to the place he came from. Meanwhile, General Hillary watches as Kohler's remains are loaded into an ambulance. He questions Lieutenant Candy and Colonel Michaelis about Trevor, and they insist he had nothing to do with the man's death. As they talk, they are unaware that they are being watched through a mystic portal by mysterious figures. These two comment on the deaths of Kohler and Slade, though they seem unconcerned since they can control thousands more. The issue ends with the reveal of these strange beings as Phobos and Deimos, sons of Ares and the gods of fear and terror. Okay, so I do want to say first off that the Lieutenant Candy, who is Steve's attaché, is a modern version of a character that we will meet next month in the Golden Age series. She's pretty different from the original version, but we don't see enough of her here to tell if she's got the same personality. And can I just point out that this is now the third version of Steve Trevor we've had, and he does not have a consistent rank in any of them. In the Golden Age comics, he's a captain. In this one, he's a colonel. In the TV show, he's a major. Just pick one rank and stick with it, dang it. It's going to be way too easy to get mixed up. The fact that Slade and Kohler are both servants of Ares, it makes me wonder how many other hidden servants Ares would have out there. I mean, they don't seem to have a very long lifespan, but it's going to be pretty tricky to tell who's friend and who's foe going forward. I wondered, they say they used the girdle of Gaia herself to forge the lasso of truth. I don't know if that means that it's the girdle that Heracles stole from the Amazons back in ancient Greek times, or if this is a different, like this is the girdle that Gaia herself actually wore. They don't clarify that. I think this is the first time I've come across a version of the story where it was an enemy leading Steve to Themyscira. Usually, it's the gods who are on the Amazon's side who are bringing him there to help get the Amazons out of their shell, basically, have them rejoin the rest of the world. Although when they're arguing about whether or not to let Trevor live, it is pointed out that Themis said to save his life, and Themis is one of the minor gods who serves under Poseidon. And Wonder Woman points out that the emblems on his uniform match her warrior's garb, and says that can't be a coincidence. In Greek mythology, Harmonia is the goddess of peace, harmony, and concord, but she was given a cursed necklace on her wedding day, and this necklace brought misfortune on anyone who possessed it. So let's hope that that's not this same necklace she gave to Wonder Woman, because that would be bad. Diana needs all the help she can get to fight the god of war himself. Interesting that in the 40s comics, the Amazons have a way to keep track of the rest of the world and so aren't surprised by the technology. Whereas in this one, of course, they think the fighter jet is a metal bird, and Wonder Woman doesn't know for sure what a bomb is. The idea of her not being familiar with modern technology can make for an interesting fish out of water story, but personally it always annoys me when you'll have an ancient culture meeting a modern one and they think that planes are birds or guns are, thunder sticks or whatever. It's just kind of cliche. I do like in the artwork when she's underwater rescuing Steve and gets a message from the god Themis. If you actually look in the lines making up the different waves, you can actually see the face of Themis talking to her. There's a lot of stuff in this issue about, Diana is our only hope, we've got to trust that she can do this, if it's her fate, then she will succeed, and if not, we're all doomed, yada yada yada. Got mildly annoying, to be honest. In Greek mythology, Phobos was the god of fear. That's where we get our word phobia. Deimos was his twin brother, the god of terror. Fitting qualities for the sons of the god of war. I'm not sure if they were supposed to be identical twins, but in the comic they definitely aren't. Deimos is wearing this snake headdress and a bunch of green. Phobos has kind of big pointy elf ears and is wearing blue. So all in all, a pretty good issue. Let's give it 3 stars out of 5. Okay, now we're moving on to Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 2. Cover date December 2011. The executive editor was Eddie Berganza. Cover art, pencils, and inks was Cliff Chang. Writer was Brian Azzarello. Colorist Matthew Wilson. Letters by Jared K. Fletcher. And the editors were Matt Idelson and Chris Conroy. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Volume 1, Blood. On Mount Olympus, Hera watches Diana, Zola, and Hermes from the end of the last issue, crying out in displeasure. A mysterious woman with a shaved head, pale purple skin, and wearing a torn black dress appears, and they have a conversation about Zeus's infidelity. Hera tells the woman, who appears to be her daughter, about how Hermes has recruited Wonder Woman to protect the child, but she still plans to exact her vengeance on Zola for sleeping with her husband. It's night on Paradise Island, and Diana carries a wounded Hermes through the forest, followed by Zola. She hears the Amazons whispering plans to attack, but once she makes her identity known, they come out of hiding and bow before their princess, who in turn bows before her mother when Queen Hippolyta comes striding out of the trees. Once in the city, Hippolyta warns Diana against siding against Hera, who will stop at nothing to punish Zola for carrying Zeus's child. Diana says she's siding with neither the god of thunder nor his wife, but rather with the mortal woman. In another room, Zola asks the wounded Hermes why Wonder Woman seems different than the other Amazons, and he tells her the classic origin of Diana being sculpted from clay and brought to life by the gods without the involvement of men. Diana spars with another Amazon while Hippolyta watches, worried about Hera knowing Zeus's child is on Paradise Island. Suddenly there's an explosion in the distance, and we see the purple-skinned goddess from earlier walk out of the flames. Diana leads the Amazons to confront the intruder, but their eyes begin to glow like the strangers, and they begin attacking each other out of confusion. Wonder Woman realizes what's happening and orders them to throw down their weapons. As she tries to restrain one of her sisters, she encounters the Purple Woman, now grown so tall that she towers over the trees. She recognizes the goddess as Strife and realizes her power of sowing discord is what's causing the Amazons to attack each other. Strife claims she was reacting to being attacked and that she's actually come in peace. Diana thinks she must be lying and so throws the lasso of truth around her neck. Amused, Strife says she only came to Paradise Island to hug her little sister. The Amazon thinks she means Zola's child, but the goddess says no, she's talking about Wonder Woman. So Strife is the New 52 version of the classic Greek goddess Eris, who was under control of chaos, strife, and discord. She's one of the few goddesses that was the child of both Zeus and Hera. The Amazon culture in this one is a lot more kind of Xena warrior princess than the others. In the 40s, they were kind of a science fiction take on ancient Greece. Post-crisis, they're kind of just classical Greek looking costumes and hairstyles and architecture. And this one, everyone is wearing like brown leather skirts and basically sports bras. Something interesting to note, in this version, Hippolyta is blonde, whereas in the pre- and post-crisis, she had black hair. Hermes talks about when he says the classic sculpted from clay origin for Wonder Woman, he talks about how she's considered to be the perfect Amazon because there was no men involved, and Zola thinks that's strange. So yeah, at the end here we have the big reveal, with the lasso of truth around her neck, so she's definitely not lying. Unless, of course, the lasso just makes her tell what she thinks is true instead of what's actually true. I always wonder that with magical truth-telling things. Like, if you wrap someone up with the lasso and ask them a question that they think they know the answer to, but they're wrong about, would they tell you the actual correct answer, or would they tell you what they think is their correct answer? But anyway, yeah. Strife says that Wonder Woman is her sister, which can only mean that Wonder Woman's father is Zeus. This was one of the big changes they made in the New 52, and we will definitely get into that a lot more next issue. So again, pretty short compared to the other issues. Let's give this 2 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have the Wonder Woman TV show, Season 1, Episode 1. The episode title is Wonder Woman Meets Baroness von Gunther. The original air date was April 21st, 1976, starring Linda Carter and Lyle Waggoner. At the War Department in Washington, D.C. in 1942, General Blankenship comes to Major Trevor's office to warn him about new activity from a Nazi spy ring that was thought to have been defeated when Steve put its leader, Baroness von Gunther, behind bars. Diana tells the general that Steve's off on a training mission, but after hearing his warning that Trevor may be in danger, decides to spin into her costume and go check on him. She arrives just in time to rescue Steve from a horrible accident when the truck he's in breaks its axle and goes careening off a cliff. Back at the general's office, Steve learns that the truck he ordered for the training mission was switched for one carrying a shipment of a new type of weapon. Steve suspects the truck was sabotaged, and the general agrees. In fact, this is the 4th weapons shipment that's been sabotaged when Trevor was nearby. The Senate has called a secret hearing to review the case against the Major, to be headed by steel magnate Arthur Deal III. Steve needs to present his top-secret orders to prove he was there on military business, but he and Diana are unable to find the papers in his office. Steve gets a call from an anonymous informant saying he will give Trevor the information he needs, as well as the missing orders, if he meets him alone at a stable in the middle of nowhere. Diana suspects it might be a trap, but she's wrong. It's obviously a trap. When the Major arrives, he's knocked unconscious by his informant and placed in the now-burning stable right next to a box of matches. The informant then calls the police to tell them that Major Trevor has set fire to the stable, which it turns out is actually a secret army ammo stockpile. Wonder Woman arrives in time to rescue Steve, and they escape just before the police arrive. Trevor wakes up lying on the couch at his secretary's apartment. She tells him he was left on her doorstep with a note from Wonder Woman explaining that the Abwehr spy ring is behind the attacks. Realizing that the attacks are all in the area of the prison holding former Abwehr leader Baroness von Gunther, they decide to pay her a visit to see if she can give them any information. While talking with the prison warden, they're interrupted by the warden's son, Tommy, a young Sherlock Holmes-obsessed boy, whose stories of investigating a hidden tunnel are dismissed as a fantasy by his father. Tommy is sent to play outside, where he finds a hidden door in the prison wall that opens with a strange key he found lying on the ground. Meanwhile, Steve and Diana interview the Baroness, who claims to be both reformed and ignorant of the Abwehr's current activity. Diana glances out a window and spots Tommy climbing a rickety ladder, so she excuses herself, then secretly spins into her costume and leaps to catch the boy, landing them both on the roof. As they climb down with the golden lasso, Tommy says he was trying to investigate the signal lights he'd seen the night before. Realizing she doesn't have time to retrieve the lasso before the guards arrive, Wonder Woman asks Tommy to hide it until she can return. The Baroness happens to see the superhero and the boy from her window, as the Major continues his questions. He notices the odd necklace she's wearing, one that the audience realizes just happens to look like the key that Tommy found, but she dismisses it as an old heirloom. Unsuccessful, Steve meets up with his secretary and they leave. That night, the Baroness and a guard named Hansen sneak out of the prison, using, and this may come as a shock, so make sure you're sitting down, the Baroness's necklace to open the door to the hidden tunnel. I know, I could hardly believe it myself. Thankfully, they're watched by Tommy, who's camped out in a tree taking notes in his casebook about everything he sees. The Baroness drives to a mansion, where she meets with a very wealthy man, and they discuss framing Trevor for sabotaging the weapon shipments. Back at the prison the next day, von Gunther approaches Tommy, pretending to be a friend of Wonder Woman. She tricks him into revealing the hiding place of the lasso, which her guard Hansen promptly steals. Major Trevor goes to a meeting at the home of Arthur Deal, the man in charge of his hearing. We and Steve quickly realize that he is actually the Baroness's rich accomplice, just before von Gunther herself enters the room with a gun pointed at Trevor. After tying him up, she shows Steve the magic lasso, telling him that if he doesn't sign a confession, he'll never see Wonder Woman again. The confession makes its way back to the War Department, but Diana refuses to believe it. As Wonder Woman, she returns to the prison to retrieve her lasso, but Tommy tells her it was taken. He did write down the license plate number of the car the Baroness drove off in, so Wonder Woman calls the Department of Motor Vehicles, and by using her ability to perfectly mimic General Blankenship's voice, which is apparently a thing she can do now, gets the name of the car's owner, Arthur Deal. She heads to Deal's mansion and finds Trevor tied up, but is knocked out by sleeping gas and bound in chains before she can rescue him. Back at the prison, the guards finally notice that the Baroness isn't in her cell. A search ensues, but Tommy's attempts to tell his father how she escaped are ignored. The boy is overheard by Hansen, who captures him and brings him to Deal's mansion. The Nazis, now with 3 captives, plan to kill the adults and frame them as spies to destroy the country's morale. But as they try to move the prisoners, Wonder Woman breaks her bonds, and she and Steve make quick work of their captors. The Baroness tries to escape, but Wonder Woman chases her down and catches her with the golden lasso. Okay, so let's start off by talking about the villain, played by Christine Belford. Baroness Paula von Gunther is actually a character from the Wonder Woman comics. She is one of only 3 of the comic book villains to appear in the Wonder Woman TV show. This plot is apparently based on one of the Golden Age comics, so presumably we will get there eventually in the pre-crisis part of the show. So yeah, this episode had more than its share of 70s corniness. Steve going to meet the informant alone and in the middle of nowhere. I mean, come on, man. That's just dumb. You're in the middle of a war. You should be smarter than this. The warden not paying attention to his son, even though he's saying, hey, there's a hidden tunnel and a secret door out of the prison. You'd think the guy should investigate that since, He's the prison warden. Thankfully, there is a scene at the end where he finds his son's notebook and uses it to discover the hidden door. And he's like, oh my goodness, my son was telling the truth all along and I didn't believe him. Which was kind of nice. The Abwehr actually was a German spy organization in the 1940s. I don't know how much they actually did in the United States, but it's pretty cool that they used a bit of real-world history. We do get the first appearance of the character Etta Candy, played by Beatrice Colin. She's never named, and I don't think she really has any lines. And in this one, she's General Blankenship's secretary. Again, we will be introduced to Etta Candy proper next month in Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 2. The episode ends with Trevor and Blankenship talking about how all the Nazis are now in prison, and the weapon shipments are all safe now. Diana expresses hope that the Nazis will learn the error of their ways. She expresses hope that the Baroness will learn that freedom and democracy are the only causes worthy of her intelligence. And that comes across as kind of corny these days, but it does show that Wonder Woman has compassion for her enemies and would rather turn them into allies than kill them, which is definitely different than most superheroes you see these days. So that was pretty cool. It wasn't really a bad episode, although the very first scene, the acting is atrocious, and at one point, the actor playing the general keeps looking directly into the camera. But it wasn't too bad, so let's give it 3 stars out of 5. Okay, I just got back from Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I'm not going to review the whole movie or even recap it. I'm just focusing on the parts that feature Wonder Woman. But the movie as a whole was really... It was dark and well, yeah, mostly it was visually dark. But it was dense. It was heavy to get through. It wasn't exactly depressing, but it was just very, very... It was heavy. It was very heavy. That said, Wonder Woman was probably the lightest, brightest part of the movie. She starts out... You see her at a function that Lex Luthor is holding. And it's like a party, so she's in a beautiful dress as Diana Prince. And I did like what they did with her costume when she wasn't Wonder Woman. It was very, very similar to her Wonder Woman costume. Well, not similar. It had kind of... It hinted at her Wonder Woman costume. So the first dress you see her in was this dark red with gold accents, especially a big gold necklace. Her later costume was kind of a white toga-esque look with going from her left shoulder, kind of like the strap that holds her lasso in her Wonder Woman costume. That part I really liked. What she's doing at this party that Lex Luthor is holding is Batman is there to steal information from Lex. He sees this pretty woman, he notices her, he gets a little distracted by her during conversation, but then he goes off to plant a bug to collect some data from LexCorp, and when he goes back to retrieve it, the bug is gone, and he turns around and Wonder Woman is there, and he tries to catch up with her, but she leaves. Later in the movie, you see her at some kind of an antiquities auction, I think. The premise, and they don't actually explain this in the movie explicitly, is that she is an antiquities dealer. Diana Prince is hiding out as an antiquities dealer. She's told that this sword is the sword of Alexander the Great, and it was used to cut the Gordian knot, and Bruce comes up and says, "Oh no, that's not the right one." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I know. The real one was sold years ago." So Bruce says, "Hey, you're a thief. You stole my chip that was getting all this data from LexCorp." And she says, "Hey, I didn't really steal it. Boys, you don't know how to share. I just borrowed it," which was kind of funny. She says that the reason she took the data that Bruce had managed to collect was that Lex Luthor had a photo that was hers, but she can't decrypt the data, so she gives it to Bruce. He is able to use the Bat computer to decode it, and Batman sends her an email, and the subject line is "Boys can share too," which has the decrypted files, and it's surveillance footage of the Flash, and of Aquaman, and of Cyborg. But then he looks and he sees that there's surveillance footage of Diana Prince just walking around. But then he opens up a file, and it's a photo from World War I of Wonder Woman. And he's like, "Oh my goodness, this is a 100-year-old picture, and it's the same woman I just saw. It's her, and I recognized Chris Pine, who is playing Steve Trevor in the movie, and there were some other people there. The picture says it was taken in Belgium during World War I. Presumably that will connect to what happens in the Wonder Woman solo film." Anyway, then we see bits of her, like in her hotel room, and then getting on a plane, and she's seeing the destruction that's being caused by the big bad. And she sees how bad it's getting, and decides she's going to leave the plane. She walks off, and then in the middle of the fight, Batman crashes his plane. He's taken out by the bad guy. And all of a sudden, he's about to get blasted, and as soon the blast goes to hit, but at the very last second, Wonder Woman gets in the way and blocks the laser blast with her bracers, and the Wonder Woman theme starts up, and it's really cool. The smoke clears, and there she is, standing there, and then she attacks the monster, which is really awesome. Then there's a bit where Superman is telling them, we've got to be careful, because this monster is from another world, and Wonder Woman kind of just goes, "Oh, that's not a big deal. I've dealt with monsters from other worlds before." And Superman looks to Batman and is all like, "Is she with you?" And Batman's like, "Well, I thought she was with you." And then the three of them are attacking the big bad monster. There's one point where the monster throws her to the other side of the area where they're fighting, and she just gets kind of this grin on her face, like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome." Then it's pretty sweet. She uses the lasso of truth to hold the monster in place while Batman shoots it with a canister of kryptonite gas, and then Superman is able to attack it with a spear. It was pretty sweet. At the end of the movie, Batman is trying to convince Wonder Woman to help him form the Justice League, and she says that she walked away from mankind 100 years ago, and it was a century of horror, and that men have made the world a place where it's impossible to stand together. But Batman says they have to, because even bigger bad guys are coming, basically. So I really liked the parts of Wonder Woman in this movie. It has me cautiously optimistic for her solo movie. Overall, I wasn't very excited by the film, but there's some hope for Wonder Woman coming out next year. So, fingers crossed. Let's hope Hollywood can give us a good Wonder Woman movie that we've wanted for so long. Okay, now on to some news. The Wonder Woman movie's release date has been moved to June 2nd, 2017, which is 3 weeks earlier than it was scheduled to be released, so that's pretty darn cool. The principal photography wrapped on May 10, and the director, Patty Jenkins, tweeted a photo of the cast and crew, which I retweeted. You can see that on the Wonder Woman WFP Twitter account. And apparently, Wonder Woman is going to be the first live-action movie directed by a woman that has a budget of $100 million. So that's pretty darn cool. In the comics, it has been announced that Greg Rucka will be returning to the book. He wrote Wonder Woman from about 2002 to 2006, and I understand he was fairly popular, so that's cool that he's going to be coming back to the book. We will get to that eventually in the modern day recaps, but won't be for a while. Also, back in 2009, there was going to be a Justice League movie, but it got canceled about, from what I hear, 2 days before filming started. But the script eventually was leaked online, and some actors at a convention recently sat down and did a read-through of the script, and it's surprisingly good. The guy who was going to direct the movie, George Miller, he went on to do Mad Max Fury Road, and a few of the actors who were going to be in his Justice League movie ended up being in that one, including Megan Gale, who was going to play Wonder Woman, but in Mad Max she ended up playing Valkyrie. Anyway, Wonder Woman and The Flash are the two standout characters, so I will include a link to the YouTube video in the show notes that you can watch. It's 2.5 hours, but it's really worth it because it's surprisingly good. And it's just crazy to think how different comic book movies would be now if this one had come out before the Avengers. And that's the end of the episode. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, conundrums, or queries, you can email me at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace@gmail.com. If you're okay with your message being read on the podcast, let me know. You can look the show up on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, and Instagram under Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace, and on Twitter and Pinterest as Wonder Woman WFP. The intro music was Wonder Woman Theme, the best Themyscira Symphony dialogue dance mix by Taz Damien Devil. You can watch the full video on his YouTube channel. The outro music is Wonder by the Doubleclicks, and you can find them on their website at thedoubleclicks.com. Next episode, I will be reviewing Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 2, Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 3, Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 3, and Wonder Woman Season 1, Episode 2. But until then, remember, sisters, hopes may fade, but wonders never cease.
'Cause you're not a quitter, you still believe the truth's in your lasso, your heart's on your sleeve, and when we're drowning in darkness, you'll save us all from going